Marta Kostyuk accused Russian players of hiding behind silence over the war in Ukraine, saying after 4 years of conflict, they had shown whose side they are on. As she reached her first Grand Slam semi-final at the French Open, the 23-year-old beat fellow Ukrainian Elina Svitolina 6-3, 2-6, 6-2 in an emotional quarter-final on Tuesday. Played hours after another night of Russian strikes on Kyiv, then launched a scathing attack on Russian players who continue to avoid publicly condemning the war.
Martin Scorsese has signed on as a partner and advisor to AI image generation startup Black Forest Labs. The New York Times reported on Tuesday. The caveat is that one of the world's most famous living directors is using the tech solely for storyboarding.
Audiobook, ebook, or both? Now, you won't have to choose. The Scribd-owned reading subscription service, Everand, wants to make the choice unnecessary. On Tuesday, the company took the wraps off a combined subscription that brings together Everand's catalogue of over 1.5 million audiobooks and ebooks with the social book club app Fable, which Everand acquired in 2025, into a single plan, directly challenging Amazon's dominance in digital reading. The new subscription is available to the two apps' 5 million combined readers and provides access to the over 1.5 million title library of audiobooks and ebooks, plus Fable's nearly 200,000 online book clubs. As you read or listen in one app, that activity is synced to the other. AI researchers and labs have advanced by leaps and bounds in evaluating AI models for everything from safety and compliance to psychophancy and alignment. But it appears companies and developers are faced with a new, specific need, making sure that their AI system behaves as intended for their specific product or service. In a bid to make that testing process simpler, Microsoft on Tuesday took the wraps off ACT, short for Adaptive Spec-Driven Scoring for Evaluation and Regression Testing.
Banu. At least 20 people, including women and children, were injured after powerful winds and a severe storm swept across Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's Banu district on Tuesday, causing the roofs and walls of houses, shops and other structures to collapse. The Pakistan Meteorological Department, PMD, that dust storms and thunderstorms were expected in BG, in the upper parts of the country, from June 2 to June 5.
The federal government on Tuesday decided to extend the operating hours of shops, markets, restaurants and other commercial outlets as part of its ongoing austerity measures, citing longer daylight hours and rising summer temperatures. The decision was taken at a meeting of the Committee for Monitoring and Implementation of Austerity Measures, chaired by Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar. The administration of United States President Donald Trump has proposed a new 25% tariff on imports from Brazil amid allegations of unfair trading practices. US Trade Representative Jameson Greer announced the new punitive tariffs late on Monday, stemming from issues including digital trade and illegal deforestation.
Getting a visa can be expensive, frustrating and for many people unsuccessful. So what happens when governments outsource that process to private companies? An investigation by Lighthouse Reports examines VFS Global, the world's largest visa processing firm, revealing how billions in applications generate enormous profits, even when visas are denied. In this episode,
French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has said he would ask President Emmanuel Macron to call an extraordinary parliamentary session in early July to speed up adoption of the government's riposte security bill after the violence that was linked to Paris Saint-Germain's Champions League victory. The bill was presented by the government on March 25 and has already been cleared by the Senate.
United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said Iran's supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei appears to be taking a more active role as negotiations between the two countries continue following an April 8th truce. testifying before the US's Senate Foreign Relations Committee. On Tuesday, Rubio said there are signs that Mojtaba Khamenei, who has not been seen publicly since US airstrikes killed his father and predecessor on the first day of the war, is alive and more deeply engaged in the country's affairs.
The Norwegian Football Federation, NFF, has formally backed an official complaint against FIFA over a breach of political neutrality rules. NFF President Lise Klaveness has said, speaking at a press conference on Tuesday ahead of the national team's departure for the World Cup. Klaveness stated that the NFF's letter of support had been officially submitted. She acknowledged submitted. She acknowledged that the move has triggered political friction within football's world governing body.
Amazon was sued on Monday over alleged privacy violations from its Ring doorbell cameras. The class action lawsuit, filed in Seattle by Virginia resident Charles Sigwalt, claims that Ring's familiar faces feature stores images of passers-by without consent. Ring announced the familiar faces feature last September and faced pushback from consumer protection organisations like the EFF, as well as Senator Ed Markey, DMA. But the company moved forward with its plans to launch the feature in December.
As AI agents grow ever more capable, enterprises racing to put them to work across applications, workflows and products face a new challenge. Ensuring an agent does what it's supposed to do when it's deployed across different environments, Microsoft trying to solve this problem with a new open source standard called Agent Control Specification, or ACS, that aims to give developers a more consistent and granular way to control what AI agents are allowed to do. Google announced on Tuesday that Android is launching fake call detection to protect against AI deepfake impersonation scams. The feature is rolling out globally in Phone by Google to Android 12 Plus devices this month, starting with Pixel devices. As people increasingly refuse to answer calls from unknown numbers, scammers are shifting their tactics by spoofing trusted phone numbers and using AI deep technology to sound like authority figures, family members, or employers.
Before Zach Eakin sold investors on his new startup, he practiced on Palmer Luckey when he left Lucky's defence startup Anduril in 2024 to start a new composites company called Layup Parts. Luckey, along with co-founders Brian Schimpf and Matt Grimm, let him workshop the pitch.
In the first weeks of 2026, OpenClaw spread through the AI world like a sonic boom, introducing many of the industry's most ambitious technologists to the joy and chaos of an unrestrained AI agent. The project's momentum tailed off after OpenAI scooped up its founder, but the influence is still being felt. Particularly at Microsoft today, Microsoft is launching Scout, a new AI assistant meant to bring the power and flexibility of OpenClaw into the Microsoft 365 system. Built on the OpenClaw framework, Scout is an always-on agentic assistant designed to work alongside the user with a persistent identity and style. Users name their own Scout instance. In my demo, it was named Sebastian, and are meant to give it ongoing feedback on tasks that could be automated.
Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, Senator Mohammed Ishaq Dar chaired a meeting of the Committee for Monitoring and Implementation of Austerity Measures at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The revised business and market operating hours were approved in view of extended daylight and rising summer temperatures. The committee reviewed ongoing austerity-related measures and decided to extend closing timings for key commercial sectors to ease public activity during peak summer conditions.
Islamabad, 4 PTI leaders, including the party's general secretary, were expelled from Gilgit-Baltistan while local leaders were detained on Tuesday. General elections in GB are scheduled for Sunday, June 7, after a 4-month delay attributed to harsh winter weather.
United Nations. Bangladesh's Foreign Minister Khalila Rahman was elected President of the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, for its 81st session 2026-27 on Tuesday, defeating Cyprus's candidate Andreas S. Koukouris in a tightly fought vote that underscores the continuing importance of regional consensus building within the global body, Rahman secured 99 votes in the 193-member ENG-A, while Koukouris received 91 votes. There were no abstentions. The required majority for the election was 96 votes. Israel continued its attacks in southern Lebanon on Tuesday, but did not strike Beirut following a partial ceasefire agreement with the Iran-backed armed group Hezbollah. Lebanon said that, under an agreement announced by US President Donald Trump late on Monday, Israeli forces would not bomb the capital in exchange for Hezbollah not attacking Israel.
A strategically important stretch of Arctic Ocean, known as the Bear Gap, has become the latest focus of concerns about Russia's military ambitions in the far north. In an interview with UK's Times newspaper on Monday, Norwegian Defence Minister Tore Sandvik warned that Moscow must not be allowed to gain control of the corridor, arguing that it would give Russia a dangerous capacity to deploy submarines and weapons.
Marking crowning achievement for all the women of Libya, in her words, Intisar Shanib has become the president of Derna Sports Club, a prominent football club in the eastern Libyan city of Derna, after all other candidates withdrew in her favour. Mohammed Abdelati, the acting president of the club's General Assembly, told the Reuters news agency on Monday that three rival candidates allowed Shanib, the MP for the city of Derna and the chairperson of the Women and Child Affairs Committee in the House of Representatives, to be installed unopposed as the sole candidate within the next 2 weeks.
The United Nations Climate Agency has warned of an increased risk of extreme weather in the coming weeks and months due to the emerging El Nino weather pattern. The World Meteorological Organization, WMO, issued the alert in a news release on Tuesday, saying that there was an 80% chance of an El Nino event marked by unusually warm sea surface temperatures in the central and eastern Pacific Ocean between June and August, and a roughly 90% chance of it forming by November.
Canada has written to the United States and Mexico with its recommendations to renew a trilateral trade agreement for 16 years, while seeking parallel talks on sectoral tariffs before a meeting between Canadian and US trade negotiators later in the day. Canada's minister responsible for Canada-US trade, Dominic LeBlanc, outlined his suggestions in a letter on Tuesday. He is due to meet US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer later in the day, after Canada was left out of bilateral trade talks between the US and Mexico last week. The country's chief trade negotiator to the US, Janice Charette, will accompany him.
President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday designed to give the government a chance to review powerful AI models before they are released. The order asks certain AI companies to voluntarily submit their new models to the government for testing or evaluation 30 days before releasing the products to the public. A previous draft of the order had called for a voluntary review up to 90 days in advance, though AI industry insiders had pushed for something closer to a 2-week window. Focused Energy recently raised an oversubscribed $240 million Series A round, one of the largest early-stage rounds for a fusion power startup. The new round, announced last week, brings the company's total private capital raised to $300 million, the company told TechCrunch. The startup has also received $200 million in grants, collectively making it one of the most heavily funded fusion startups.
Washington. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Tuesday told lawmakers that Iran had agreed to begin limited negotiations over its nuclear program, marking what he described as a tentative but meaningful shift in Tehran's posture as the United States-led conflict continues to destabilize the Middle East. Rubio said that Iran had also indicated interest in discussing parts of its nuclear program that it had previously refused to engage on, but he cautioned that this did not ensure the negotiations would produce a deal to end the US-Israeli conflict with Iran. Pakistan, along with 7 other Muslim countries, on Tuesday condemned the continued incursions by extremist Israeli settlers into Al-Aqsa Mosque in the strongest terms, calling for an immediate cessation of all such provocative practices. According to a joint statement released by the Foreign Office, the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, Indonesia, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates condemned in the strongest terms the continued incursions by extremist Israeli settlers into Al-Aqsa Mosque under the protection of the Israeli forces, as well as the raising of the Israeli flag within its courtyards. Security forces killed 17 terrorists during intelligence-based operations IBOs in different districts of Balochistan following the suicide car bomb attack against a shuttle train in Quetta, said a statement released by the Inter-Services Public Relations ISPAR on Tuesday. At least 14 people were killed and 20 others were injured in the incident, which took place on May 24.
A British couple jailed in Iran on espionage charges have lost an appeal against their 10-year sentence. According to their family, Lindsay and Craig Foreman were arrested in January 2025 while passing through Iran on a round-the-world motorcycle trip.